This video is part of the fundamental training series, Southwest Middle School, and this is covering Google Forms. I get to Google Forms by going into my Google Apps or through my Drive, and I click on Forms I'm creating, and this will take me to Forms. Once I get here, I can create a new form. It's got a couple of things that I can choose from in my template gallery or do a blank form. I'm going to start with one that I've already got here. When we create our forms, this is a form that I've already set up and created. Give it a name at the top. I have my questions here that I can do. I can select and add questions simply by hitting the plus icon. This will bring in and allow me to insert another question. There are lots of question types that we can choose. I can choose from a multiple choice, checkboxes, drop down, a linear scale, multiple choice grid, checkbox grid, or I can have them put in date and time if we've got that. So simply type in my question, give me my options. I can add as many options as I would like to do. And I can also select if we want this to be required or not required. Because I've got this set up and we go through some of our settings in here. So when I go to my settings of it, this opens up and says where we're going. This is something that I'm trying to do, setting like my feedback from my trainings or things like that. I would turn off to collect email addresses, which allow it to be anonymous. I can still give somebody response receipt, and if they request it or always, and what do they want it to say. I can choose to restrict it to just our district or just one response, or make it that they can respond after each time. I can also show the progress bar, which if you have a lot of questions or a long lengthy thing, it'll tell them how far they are with it. Another option is shuffling up the question order. This can be a little dicey if you're shuffling your question order when you are referring to a certain story or a certain picture or something like that. If you insert a picture and then you have 3 questions about that picture and shuffle your question order, it will interfere with where it potentially could interfere with where those questions show up in relation to the question to the picture. So if you're going to shuffle the question order on a big test, you might want to think about doing sections, and each section would perhaps be over a particular story or a particular topic. So then the questions would be shuffled within that section, but when they get to section 2, everybody's working on that same story or same topic. Last part that I can choose for my settings is to make this a quiz or not. If I make this a quiz, it will give me my quiz options. You can release their grade if all of their questions, if there are not any questions that need you to review, you can release it immediately after each submission. I can also, respondents can see if they want them to see their missed questions, correct answers, and point values. I leave it to after manual review as a personal setting for me, because I want to make sure that I get everybody that comes in and takes their test and does their makeup, so that if I release it immediately and they can see their missed questions and correct answers, there's the potential that they could share that with somebody else that maybe was absent or hadn't taken the test yet. So I don't do that. So I always leave mine for manual review, but that's more of a personal preference. When you're going and you're setting up your questions, and say I've got right here, and we've got the question of what does the LED stand for? It's a light emitting diode. One of the things that I can do is I go to my answer key, and I can select the answer key by selecting which is the correct answer. If there's more than one correct answer, I can select all of the correct answers or deselect all of the correct answers, and I can even come in and add answer feedback for them on if they get an incorrect answer. Perhaps if they do an incorrect answer, I can refer them back to a section that they were supposed to look at, or I could type in something like, remember this is an acronym that starts with light. There you go. So I could do that. So it would give me that, and I could save that. I could even give them a link to a particular source if they needed to see that. Really, when you're providing the feedback for incorrect answers, that's helpful if you're allowing them to go back and edit their answers after they made an incorrect answer or got something incorrect. When I get down to some of my where they're defining, and this is a long answer text. So I chose I can either do a short paragraph or short answer, or long answer text, which would be a paragraph. So this is where we go. These get a little tough when you're doing if you are adding your feedback for them. So I can add feedback for them if it is a short answer. So let's go back here to one that I did as a short answer. So this is, I did what does polarized mean? What I can do for my answer key for the short answer is I can add a correct answer. This could help if maybe my answer is blue. I could type in blue, and that would say that that is a correct answer. I could also add a correct answer of blue in lowercase spelling. If I wasn't going to be concerned about spelling, I could also add a correct answer that was BLU, if that was something that I just wanted to make sure that they knew the content. If I'm going to do this as correct answers to do the automatic grading, you would need to account for all variances that you would take with it. So when you're doing a paragraph, you really can't do that. So if you do any kind of where they have to submit a paragraph or a sentence, you would want to make sure that you set up for manual review. Otherwise, it will automatically be marked as missing if you release scores immediately after they get it. So that's your variety of your question types. I can go into my color palette. I can change the color of it. Talk a little bit about add-ons. One of the ones that I like to do is what's called form limiter. Form limiter is a great one that I could set a limit with my form if it was something that I wanted to do. How many times can somebody respond? It's a great add-on. I can say I'm closing this form at a certain time. Maybe I wanted to get what do we want for a form for what kind of food do we want for Friday's advisory, and I'm going to give them until Thursday to do it. How many times do I want them to do? I can also set a limit of maybe it's each activity, and I only want 6 kids per activity. Once 6 kids get into an activity, I can limit it and say, okay, that form will no longer fill in. So that's a great way to do that. Looking at responses, I can see a summary with my scores. Gives me a real quick of how kids did on their responses, what they've done. I can also go by question type, see how they answered for question 1. I just added a new question in there, so that's why that response is not graded. But then if I go to my first one, at 38 that responded got this correctly. If I wanted to see who got it correctly, I could click on that. I had 2 that got it incorrectly, and this is what they chose for light encoding device. I had 2 that did little erupting daylight, and I had 1 that called it a laser infused device. And so if I wanted to see specifically, I could click there to go back and look at that individual response, go through all my questions there. Or if I wanted to go through individual responses, I could look at each individual test. I'm not going to do that for security purposes, but then we go over here to viewing my responses in sheets. When I click on to view my responses in sheets, if the very first time that I've done this, I've already created a sheet, it gives me an option to create the destination, or I can choose a new destination for my Unit 1 responses. So if I've got my responses here, let's go back to the form real fast. If I go here to my settings, I can select a response destination, or I can unlink the form from my response destination. Say I wanted to go to a new response destination, I could go to a new response destination. So if I go here to select a response destination, I've already created a spreadsheet that I've got here. I can select my existing sheet, or I can make a new sheet. I could call this a new sheet. So that would give me a new sheet to look at. When I'm looking at my responses, this gives me, I can hide a column. When I'm looking at this, gets a little bit into our form, our sheets data. But if I right click or on something, I can hide a column. So with this particular data, if I was going to share this with somebody else, I've hidden my student names so that you can't see my student names to know who it was that answered the question. And so this is a real quick tutorial covering our Google Forms and how do we set up forms. I almost forgot. I was getting real fast here ahead of myself. Setting out your forms, pretty simple. Once your form is ready, I can automatically collect email addresses. If I turn this off, it won't collect email addresses. I can send my form by email, by link, or I can embed it into social media tools such as Twitter, Facebook, Google+. If I'm going to do an email, I don't like to use the forms for an email because then I don't know who it emailed to, because it doesn't show up as being a part of my sent emails. So if I was going to send it as an email, I still always go over to the link. And then when I've got it as a link, I can shorten the URL. And even if I'm going to do it as an email, I take that, I pop over to Gmail. That way I've got the tracking of sending it out as an email. But you can very easily send it out. If you just wanted to send it out one time, you can send it out to Southwest teachers, get a form out there to just a certain group of students. You could send it out to a certain group of students and do it that way through the link. And that is Google Forms and how we would get that. You can take these over into Classroom and embed them into the classroom as well.